Twitch. Hello on YouTube. I've been having some issues with simultaneous local recording and Twitch streaming on OBS. I think it's because of the enormous. I'm gonna bite my tongue on that word because the enormous footprint for Windows 11 really unconscionable. The way that Windows is constantly forcing people to update to their newer versions, wherever, and they're just constantly increasing the footprint, adding more bloatware, saying, well, Microsoft Edge is an integral part of Windows, for instance. So I have Edge processes running as well as Windows, even though I don't use Microsoft Edge, and all sorts of other nonsense. So the combination, though, I mean, when I got this computer, I only had Windows 10, and that has a smaller footprint. But then they released Windows 11, and we're discontinuing support, and you have to update, which is ridiculous. They basically force people to do it. And why? Well, it's not like they were getting paid for the Windows 11 in many cases. Some more, although there could be said something about consolidating support, I suspect they're probably stealing data from people. Prove it. That's not a, let's be clear, a legal accusation or anything, but we live in the age where software companies are collecting as much data as you can, as you about they can, and then selling it anonymized, so it's not you necessarily attached to your name or whatever, although it's often easy enough to reconnect fashion in order to make advertisers rich. And of course, then there's data brokers who figure out how to associate it back with names and sell identities in the dark web. And yeah, we live in a dystopia. Let's be clear, a capitalist dystopia. People constantly say and try and say it's not capitalism's fault. It's not capitalism's fault. They, of course, have no definition for what capitalism actually is. It's almost always, it's just free markets. What does the term free market mean? Free for who? Free to do what? What they mean is it's free for the owners of capital to gain returns, interest on their capital. So that ranges from banks lending money at sometimes very high interest rates, or especially like payday lenders, to most importantly, shareholders getting dividends, getting returns, getting increase in the price of stocks, stock buybacks, all that stuff. That's the nature of capitalism. Capitalism is about the private ownership of the means of production. To use the Marxist term for it, is about joint stock corporations. The beginnings of capitalism are in the 1600s with the first joint stock corporations. It actually started in the mid 1500s, the very first ones, if I remember correctly. It's been around a long time. It coexisted initially with feudalism and came to replace it. That part of the Marxist analysis of the evolution of societies is fairly well supported by the historical record. Anyways, so Windows sucks. Microsoft sucks. I don't think I am saying anything too controversial in that. And between the bloatware that is Windows, that pretty much everyone is forced to use, that or Apple, which don't get me started on their pricing. Or you can do Linux, but you'll find very few programs run well on it without a lot of hassle. I've run Linux in the past, and it's a pain. You can usually get what you need working if you know what you're doing and run the right version of Linux. So yeah, but it's a pain. And with my long COVID, I just can't. I just can't. Yeah, I must have disabled long COVID. I have very low energy. I spent all my energy just trying to get stuff working on Linux. Having enough trouble as this. But anyways, with all that footprint, resource footprint on my laptop, and not exactly if ever had a huge budget to buy this, even though it was on sale, and better than normally would have bought, I can stream, or almost no drop frames, but a few. That's not good. I can stream, or I can record for YouTube. I can't do both at the same time. What I'll have to do is upload to Twitch, then go and download my streams, and maybe do a little editing on it to format it for YouTube, and then upload to YouTube if I want to be on both Twitch and YouTube. And I do, because I desperately desperately trying to grow my audience so that I can eventually, sorry, procrastinator man, I'll do it eventually. If you ever read The Seven Habits of Highly Effective Teens, you'll get that reference. Otherwise, I know it's obscure. Um, oh yeah, they just added the quote Age of Reason um, update here. The alcohol, that's most certainly not an Age of Exploration thing. Fermented fruit and grain beverages provide a sterile alternative to poor contaminated water sources. Starting with wine and beer, alcohol will become a seminal feature of civilization. But its intoxicating effects lead to bad behaviors. Tell me about that. I have a violent roommate who I'm pretty sure has an alcohol abuse problem because all his unpredictable violent behavior while threatening to kill me and such has always been when I could like smell alcohol on his breath if I got close enough, or when he walked past or even left a room. So, and based on various pieces of information, I'm pretty sure he gets off work, then gets drunk, then comes home, and then acts badly. Um, so yeah, roommate with alcohol abuse problem who's threatened to kill me, and yes, I did report it to the police, and no, they didn't do jack help. Um, and what did do help was getting a restraining order on the guy, which is through courts, not through the police, but then a different judge threw that out because I'm not going to get into too much in details. I don't need people dox me. Let's see. Also, happy holiday presents can be opened starting December 20th. So only 3 more days, and still only a few dropped frames. That's good. Yeah. So, I'm trying to get to where I can monetize YouTube, and how am I doing for saving for upgrade points? Converted metabits. I got some on the order of the 19th. I guess this is new, the entropy boost time chamber, or maybe I just unlocked it by finishing something else out. Helps with the longer simulations, but there's an idea time chamber. Maybe this was added in the new update. Decided that it wasn't favoring longer simulations enough. Conceptual converter. Yeah, some of these look new. Probably with the update. So we're rolling out new features or new upgrades. Um, hmm. So I'm trying to get to where I can monetize YouTube, Twitch, and supplement. Hopefully, I'll get Social Security because I doubt I'll ever make enough to live off with this. And because I'm disabled with long COVID, I can't do normal work. I deal with argument with this about with one of my parents just recently. They're both my parents were abusive. Sometimes still contact with them. My brother cut them out of his life. I'm like, no, cautiously in small doses, but they always toxic nonsense. This parent trying to like find excuses why I must be to blame for this remain. Couldn't find any, but I'm sure they'll keep flailing and come up with something later. Like, did you argue with him? You must have argued with him. Did you argue with him? Like, no, I've never talked to the guy. Once he caught me while I was drinking coffee, cornered me, and was yelling at me. And the only thing I said to him is, "You're harassing me. You've been threatening violence at me before. This is abusive behavior. Go away. I'm not going to talk to you." And just kept saying that like a broken record until he got frustrated. He was standing over me, waving his arms aggressively. He had threatened to kill me at other times. I mean, this is not someone I want to interact with, obviously. Regardless of whether or not that was the right way to respond to that, the fact is he's driving this with, you know, unhinged behavior like that, like threatening to kill me 3 different times. Um, but yeah, no, I was in an argument with the parents explaining, like, well, couldn't you do medical transcription? No, because medical transcription, if you make an error or misspell something, someone can die. They're not going to hire someone who's got a disease that makes attention to detail darn nigh impossible. My long COVID brain fog means I'm constantly forgetting stuff, constantly missing details, have trouble focusing, have trouble multitasking, get noise sensitivity, and that's not even the worst symptom. The worst symptom is the fatigue, which means that I can like work for an hour, lie flat on my back for an hour, which is often what happens with my YouTube. I'll record for an hour or Twitch here. Sometimes I push longer, and sometimes I pay the price post exertion ways next day or days after. And PEM isn't just something you can push through, by the way. Post exertion ways, if I ignore it and do something else that would cause post exertion ways on its own, it will stack, and not additively, multiplicatively. If I do something that would cause X amount of post exertion ways and something would cause X the next day, it won't be 2X again, it'll be 4X post exertion ways. And people who've ignored it and pushed it over and over, despite knowing this multiple effect, have gotten to the point where they've had seizures and suffered brain damage, sometimes from really bad seizures. And some people with long COVID have ended up in nursing homes very young, although usually they were much more severe cases than mine to begin with, or I don't know, they were somehow able to somehow willing to push through a stupid amount of PEM until, I mean, I'm very much, I caffeinate like heck, and I can only do so much, you know. I can't even imagine if someone would do that much pen. They must have more severe case to begin with. But anyways, I do notice increased risk of heart attack and stroke with this disease, specifically the obstructive rather than the hemorrhagic variety, because long COVID has a lot of, there's micro blood clots that form in it. It's been found. It's also been found there's possible autoantibodies. So one theory of its cause, its etiology. Because yeah, I can remember some of the advanced terms from my biological medical sort training is it was trying to become a physician. I was pre-med doing special masters, already had a different masters, was very close to having two more, and then starting an MD. By all accounts, including from professors, brilliant before this. So I picked up a lot of terminology, and sometimes it comes back to me, but I not consistent enough. I could do any job where somehow I would only need terminology and not attention to detail. But anyways, one of the suspected etiologies, and you can see how I jump around here. I can't focus very well or keep a train of thought. But one of the possible etiologies of long COVID, what am I doing for time? I've been not even 13 minutes. Okay. Of is autoimmune is that the body produces antibodies against residual coronavirus, which a very early theory was viral persistence causing long COVID, that the viruses stay in the body and that's causing damage. But then there was this pivotal study. Science often hinges on certain studies that have a huge impact and manage to reach a wide audience among scientists. It's not always, it doesn't matter the way public gets the information, but, it was in a prestigious journal. Do a lot of other scientists read it? Do they agree with the findings? But there was this pivotal, and sometimes it turns out pivotal studies have been falsified data or something, and it screws up science for a long time. That's a problem. But there was this pivotal study that showed that there was coronavirus, or there's was mistaken the methodology can happen, like something was being contaminated by accident, or anyways, pivotal study that found they took thigh tissue biopsies. They took a little piece of the thigh muscle from both people with long COVID and people without. After I think they mixed it with an exercise regimen. I think this was stated that. So they found a couple things. One, they found people with long COVID, there was an immune reaction against the thigh muscle. Unsurprising. The extent of scar tissue formation did surprise the scientists. So there's permanent damage done to muscles if you do exercise. So the exercise intolerance of long COVID should not be ignored. I made a mistake of doing that once, climbing a mountain after my brother's wedding, and my legs have never been the same. There's probably a bunch of scar tissue in my leg muscles that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Bad idea. But I too much bought into the rhetoric in the past, which society pushes this because a lot of people are assholes, honestly. Oh, there we go, swearing. YouTube will try and censor me. That So there would be this idea that you can just push through long COVID. That's a load of nonsense. You cannot just push through long COVID. It is a severe, debilitating disease, and you push through it and you cause permanent damage, and then you'll be even less healthy and even less capable, which I've experienced by sometimes pushing through and probably causing permanent damage to muscles that won't even heal if they cure this disease, because scar tissue doesn't just go away. It's pretty much with you for life. That's why old wounds can, quote, reopen, is because there's scar tissue there instead of whatever normal tissue type would be there, such as, dermal tissue, epidermal tissue, and scar tissue can be less structurally sound. That's why old wounds reopen. That isn't just like a literary phrase. Literally, sometimes in certain disease states or states of malnutrition, you can have scar tissue degenerate to the point where old, like someone got cut bad and there's scar tissue, and it'll open back up and start bleeding again because scar tissue is structurally weaker than what it replaces very often. And it's less stable and it can degenerate in certain conditions like severe malnutrition. But anyways, so they did the exercise study. They took thigh tissue biopsies. They're mostly looking for the extent of damage, but they also found, and they made sure to test for this, if this is, I'm thinking the right study, or maybe it was the one where they did gut tissue biopsies. Anyways, they found residual coronavirus DNA years after the infection, so it wasn't like they just been infected recently in both in healthy individuals and those with long COVID. So they expected they'd probably find it with long COVID individuals, but they found it healthy individuals as well, which shows that that's not the cause of long COVID, or at least, and it's not sufficient. It may be necessary, but not sufficient to use terminology we use in biology when figuring out what's caused. So maybe that the viral persistence is important to long COVID, but just having viral persistence won't cause long COVID because healthy individuals have it. That's the proof that it's not sufficient to cause it, but maybe necessary. And one of the leading theories that eventually evolved based partly on this finding is that and then looking at antibodies, is there appear to be antibodies that are targeting the residual coronavirus that have cross-reactivity against the body's own normal tissue. This is known as autoimmunity or self-immunity. Auto means self in biological jargon. So you get an autoimmune disease essentially that's being driven by this viral persistence, but it's really the autoimmune disease that causes the harm. Since some of the things that be cross-reactive can be found throughout the body, since coronavirus binds to blood vessels and receptor, and the molecules it uses to do that have to have structures that are actually fairly similar to ones that are found throughout the vascular system. So, blood vessels, capillaries, arteries, veins. And so the multi-organ system dysfunction that is found in long COVID, because very few organ systems are working correctly. If you were to, do an autopsy on me after I died, you'd probably find my heart, my kidney, my lungs, nothing's working quite right. And that's what they found when they did autopsies on people with long COVID who died, is none of the organ systems are working quite right. Different degrees with different people. Sometimes it's subclinical, that is, it's not causing problems, and sometimes it's there, but normal tests for these things aren't sensitive enough if the effects are very minor, but sometimes it's very, very obvious, and even ordinary routine tests will pick up on this organ system dysfunction in those cases. But multi-organ system dysfunction thought to be caused by attacks on the blood vessels, and you find blood vessels in every organ in your body pretty much. Every organ in your body needs blood, so it needs oxygen, which the blood carries. So attacks on that vasculature, still smart. I just can't consistently use terms, or like today I'll remember the words multi-organ system dysfunction, vasculature, etc. And tomorrow I won't even remember the word for those things. And then the day after I'll remember it again. My brain is it's like a circuit. Well, I don't know. It's like an electronic that's short circuiting. I think that'd be it, right? description. I don't know electronics well enough. Where sometimes connections are firing off that shouldn't, and sometimes they're firing off when they should, but not the right time. Um, it's a mess. It does lead to sometimes intuitive links that might not make a lot of sense, but promise I can usually explain the connections. I mean, I've always been predisposed to intuitive leaps before, but it was much more obvious and logical and direct, even so. But within the spectrum of intuitive to non-intuitive personality types, because there are tests for this and stuff, I usually fall on the intuitive side. Although when I was in Army ROTC, I learned to suppress my intuitive thinking and think in a much more clearly delineated ways, which is necessary often in the military, since if you have to explain the reasoning for something, you intuitively are not going to be. So I did learn, and actually, Myers-Briggs, which is a terrible personality test, not very statistically valid at all, but got so that I could test as a non-intuitive type sometimes if I put myself in the mindset when before I was always showing up as intuitive. So became more flexible in my thinking. I learned to think in a more strictly hierarchical, logical approach as opposed to intuitive leaps, which might sound weird for scientists that have thought that way, although biology tends to be more intuitive. Of course, maybe this is part of why later I went back to grad school after then studying for the MCAT a bunch, which also taught me new ways of thinking. Working as an EMT, which taught me new ways of thinking, that I was able to get straight A's in my special masters until I got disabled on COVID. Straight A's, impress my professors with my brilliance, and do a really prestigious research internship that got somewhat screwed by the pandemic. But yeah, if not for the COVID, I would have been a doctor. Not for long COVID, for sure. And I mean, if not for long COVID, at least, and probably, I mean, the pandemic did mess with that research, but I would have found another research project. I mean, messed with it. It had a delayed start, and there were issues. I was working under a surgeon, and he was terrible communicating by email. He was great at communicating in person, but since the hospital was doing research, it wasn't allowing people to come in person for the research, even though they allowed me to come in person to watch his surgeries. It's like, what? Why don't you come in? Let me come into the office, the research offices. They weren't allowing any researchers who weren't strictly necessary. It's just part of the bureaucratic rules. No strictly and only strictly necessary personnel may enter the research spaces, kind of thing. And since I was doing statistical research on his surgeries, anyways, because of a breakdown in communication, because this guy would not ask the questions he needed answered, I would answer what he asked, and he began to know I wasn't answering questions he didn't ask. That caused a problem, and the project started late because of the pandemic. Like the onboarding for the everything occurred like more than 3 months late. So a late start plus slow progress plus falling apart communication end. I would have had to spend the summer finishing up my research, probably doing a library thesis. But that's fine. I would have still had straight A's. I would have graduated with straight A's. I would have taken a gap year, worked in biotech for a while with 2 new master's degrees on my belt. 2, because I was throwing another one that would help me get employment in biotech. And then I would have gone off to med school, and I was planning on doing that in Australia because my program knew I wanted to get out of the country and point out that there was med school in Northern Australia that no one really in Australia wanted to go to because Northern Australia is a very poor, underdeveloped area. I'm talking not like the northeast part, but like north central Australia. And they were taking a lot of American students, and I could definitely get in. It was either that or Ireland. She was like, you don't have to go to Caribbean med school. You can do better than that. But maybe still not the best to count on some of the international med schools in like Czechoslovakia and stuff with rising xenophobia in mainland Europe. Plus, those are very hard to get into, so not a surefire bet. But Australia and Ireland would be pretty safe choices, and I could also still apply to like I'm trying to remember where I found there were international med schools. I think Czechoslovakia had one, Denmark had one. There are a couple that will teach in English, although it still helps to speak the language, for your everyday life. And I'm not great with foreign languages. So Australia, it's an English-speaking country. So is Ireland. So that was the other thing. And she knew I struggled with foreign languages, but I wanted to get out of the country. And the program head knew this because I was worried about America's slide to the right and towards fascism. And this was, mind you, in the Biden years. This is before Trump 2.0. After Trump 1.0, he just left, and I knew someone like him was coming back. I didn't think it would be him. I thought it would be like someone younger, but I knew the Republicans were going to put forward another fascist, and they were probably going to win eventually. And that America was going to hell. And I expressed this to the program head, and that I wanted to get out before things really, that this was a sinking ship, and there's some fascists. They're like rats on a fishing ship. No, socialists are not rats. We are human beings who want a better world, and right wingers, you do not understand what socialism is. You do not at all. It is worker control of businesses. It is not let's tax everybody and have everyone be equal. That's not socialism. That's not what the Soviet Union did. That's not what any socialist country anywhere has done. What you're referring to is social democracy. The closest to that you find is like Norway, Sweden, but which is actually still capitalist. No, socialists want workers' cooperatives. They want nationalized industries, and they want workers to have democratic participation in the workplace so that they don't have a business owner taking half the value they produce. That's the average percent that you lose in the United States is around half, like 45 to 55%, depending on the estimate of the value you produce, is taken by your boss, is taken by the shareholders. Boss if it's a privately owned business, shareholders if it's publicly traded, that is on the stock market. And that's a good ratio. In the third world, it's not uncommon for somebody to get paid something like 1/40th the value they produce. They may not produce that much in absolute terms, so it may not look like an impressive amount that's being taken, but from someone who's living on less than $2 a day, making even 10 times what they're making would make a huge difference in their lives. Instead of $2 a day, $20 a day is an enormous difference. And this is one of the inefficiencies of capitalism, of course, is it gives more to those who already have an enormous amount and takes from those who have the least. And that's because the people who own most of the capital are the rich, and the people who don't own capital are the poor. So capitalism takes from the poor, gives the rich, but socialism is not the state of everyone being equal. It's a state of capital ownership not being in the hands of private individuals. The state or workers' cooperatives own all the capital, all the businesses. So workers' cooperatives actually exist in the United States, a capitalist country, because it's a form of socialism that can exist. There are coffee shops, advertising agencies, architecture firms. I think I saw it was a flower shop. I was looking at a list of workers' cooperatives in the U.S. There's thousands. I think there's 2,000 workers' cooperatives in the United States of America. Agriculture cooperatives sometimes make the list, but they're not real workers' cooperatives because usually an agriculture cooperative is a group of farm owners who cooperate to own processing, distribution facilities, manufacturing. But it's not a true workers' cooperative because the farm hands, the people who do most of the labor on the farm, have no democratic participation. So that's not really a cooperative, even though some lists of cooperatives, they make up the lion's share, but these lists usually don't actually collect the full list of all the coffee shops and stuff. Coffee shops are something that's not particularly capital intensive, and so it hasn't been the hardest for worker-owned coffee shops to form. Advertising agencies either, you don't need a lot of expensive machinery, you just need a lot of human capital for an advertising agency. So if you have a bunch of people with that advertising knowledge who come in, they decide they don't want to work for a boss, they want to form a company where they're all pool the resources and own the company together, and they tend those sort of people tend to be in the middle class. they have a little bit of resources to pool, you can have a worker-owned business fairly easily, and you do. There are a lot of worker-owned advertising agencies in the United States, surprisingly. Even though advertising is part of the problem of what makes capitalism suck so much, because it distorts any tendency at all, whatever illusion you might have that the invisible hand of capitalism distributes resources efficiently. That's a load of crap, anyways. But it's definitely not true with advertising because it can manufacture demand for low quality products that would not normally sell based on price and quality. Uh, and at the same time, it leads to monopoly because obviously the companies who have the largest market share can afford the most advertising, which grows their market share even further, which eventually leads to just one company owning everything. Capitalism inevitably tends towards monopoly, and only government regulation can prevent it. But because rich people get even richer with monopolies, they will undermine the regulations. The regulations are not stable in the sense that the rich people who tend to already own the politicians will eventually destroy these sorts of regulations. Capitalism is inherently unstable. So yeah, I'm a socialist. I've spent a lot of time reading about this stuff, learning about it. Folks on Twitch might have seen me talk about this a little on my Plague Inc. Outbreak series, and I probably have no one watching this because Twitch is very hard to break into, and all I get is now and then a bot. But someday I'll get a user come over, and then they'll like it, and then another user. So, and I do have viewers on YouTube, so someone's watching this, hopefully. Though lately YouTube has been crushing my viewership totals. It's been picking up subscribers, and the impressions haven't been terrible, which usually means, and the click-through rate has actually been pretty good, but the viewing hours are terrible, which usually means that YouTube is trying to push my videos on a lot of people who don't want to watch them. I guess maybe I can't blame for YouTube for that. It may actually be, in the past, too often they put me in a real niche, but right now, whatever is going on with the algorithm, whether it's trying to diversify my audience or what, but not showing my videos to my original viewership, because otherwise that wouldn't lead to a decline in viewing hours. Or maybe it's just the time of year people are too busy to watch. I seem to have a lot of college students who watch my channel. So it could be just the time of year. It could be that YouTube is trying to diversify, or it could be that YouTube is just being ruthless to my channel right now. I have no idea what. All I know is there's a chance no one's seen this. And there's a chance someone is. And I hope if you're watching this, you're enjoying this. I got to keep just putting out content. I'm not psychic. I won't know which videos are going to get viewers or not. So I act like everything is being watched. So maybe my one viewer today, or maybe my 1,000, who knows? Maybe this channel goes viral by the time this publishes. Unlikely. But since there is a little bit of a buffer on this series, this might go live in a time where my channel is enormously larger. Might 1 in a billion odds or something, but even the lowest probabilities eventually happen. Anyways, let's grab this. I try not to have videos go much longer than 35 minutes ever. It's my absolute longest. Sometimes I even will cut these. It depends, but I've got a backlog of some really old Crisis in the Kremlin videos that I want to chop up. I've had such a huge buffer that there's no risk of the buffer running out, but I just want to get them off my laptop, especially when I have a violent roommate who I'm worried might try and destroy my laptop at some point. Want to get them on YouTube servers where they're safer. Or, if my laptop eats it, it'll be better if they're already in YouTube servers. So I got Crisis in the Kremlin videos, and I got a remaster of my Vampire series, which I just kind of put aside, and it's been many, many months since I've remastered another one of those old videos, and I need to get back to that and finish at least the ones on my laptop, and really I need to just finish the project to remaster in that whole series, and then recontinue the series, because it's not a terrible game. I was streaming it way back when my audience was tiny, but these days I might actually have enough of an audience that I get some viewers and the algorithm keeps pushing it to more. If something gets no viewers, it tends to just stay at no viewers. The way, I don't know. There seems to be an exponential effect with YouTube algorithms. Well, anyways, I wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. And may you always find a guiding star with you. Until next time, it's Northstar. Adieu. And best luck to you.